Today, we are covering 5 major breaking news stories that are reshaping the Middle East and sending shockwaves through the global order. The first is Israel's large-scale air assault on Iranian nuclear and weapons facilities. The second is the United States deploying a third aircraft carrier to the region. The third is Iran recruiting children as young as 12 years old to serve at military checkpoints in Tehran. The fourth is the Israeli military claiming it can destroy up to 90% of Iran's entire war industry within days. And the fifth is the Houthis of Yemen entering the conflict directly, launching ballistic missiles at Israeli territory. This is March 28, 2026, and the Middle East is on fire. Let's start with what happened in the skies over Iran on Friday. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that more than 50 fighter jets from the Israeli Air Force conducted coordinated strikes against Iranian nuclear and weapons production facilities across 3 separate regions. These were not isolated hits. The operation unfolded in 3 distinct waves over the course of several hours, targeting infrastructure that Israel describes as central to the Iranian regime's ability to build and sustain a nuclear weapons program. Among the sites hit was the heavy water facility in Iraq, which Israeli military officials identified as a key production site for plutonium used in nuclear warheads. A facility in Yazd was also struck, one that Israel claims is used to produce explosive materials directly involved in the uranium enrichment process. Beyond the nuclear dimension, the strikes also hit a military industry installation used to manufacture various types of weapons, and a site linked to Iran's Ministry of Defense that was reportedly being used to develop and produce advanced explosive devices. Israeli military statements also allege that several of these locations were actively being used to supply weapons to Hamas and Hezbollah, and that one of the targeted sites was involved in producing components for ballistic missiles and air defense systems. Iran had not issued an official response to these specific claims at the time of reporting. And here is where the picture gets even more significant. On Saturday, a senior Israeli military official stated that Israeli forces believe approximately 70% of Iran's military-industrial components have already been damaged in the ongoing campaign, and that the objective is to push that number to around 90% within a matter of days. That is not a minor tactical strike. That is a systematic campaign designed not only to degrade Iran's immediate military capacity, but to cripple its ability to rebuild and produce weapons for years to come. The official confirmed that the campaign has targeted surface-to-surface and surface-to-air missile infrastructure, Ministry of Defense production facilities, ballistic system manufacturing sites, and a command headquarters involved in naval weapons development. He added that the operation was being executed methodically, without wasting munitions, and that some previously struck sites had been hit again, including installations in Iraq. The goal, as described by the official, goes beyond operational damage. It is about economic disruption, about cutting off the supply chains that feed not only Iran's own military machine, but also the armed groups it sponsors across the region. Now think about what it takes to sustain that kind of campaign. The United States is not standing on the sidelines. The USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike groups are already operating in the Middle East in support of American and Israeli operations. But according to a report by ABC News on Saturday, citing American officials, a third carrier strike group is now on the move. The USS George H.W. Bush has departed from Norfolk, Virginia, and is heading toward the region. That would bring 3 American supercarriers into the theater simultaneously, a deployment of naval power that signals unmistakably how serious Washington considers this moment. There is a complication, however. The Ford is currently docked in Crete after suffering a fire on board, and its return to full operational status remains uncertain. The timing of that damage could not be worse, particularly given what is now happening on another front, because the Houthis have entered the war. On Saturday, Houthi military spokesman Brigadier General Yahya Sari announced through the rebel satellite channel Al Masirah that Yemen's Houthi forces had launched a barrage of ballistic missiles at what he described as sensitive Israeli military sites in southern Israel. These are the first Houthi missile strikes since the broader conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran began. Israeli forces reported intercepting one of the missiles. Air raid sirens sounded for the third time in the early hours between Friday and Saturday in Beersheba and in the area surrounding Israel's primary nuclear research center. No casualties or significant damage were reported. But the strategic message is loud and clear. The Houthis are no longer watching from the sidelines. Sari stated that the strikes would continue until the declared objectives of the Houthi armed forces are achieved, and until what he called aggression against all fronts of resistance comes to an end. Houthi Deputy Information Minister Mohammed Mansour told local media that a blockade of the Bab al-Mandeb Strait is among the options being considered. That strait is a critical choke point in the Red Sea, and approximately 30% of Israel's imports pass through it. Blocking it would deal a serious blow to the Israeli economy and would escalate the humanitarian and commercial consequences of this war far beyond the battlefield. Between November 2023 and January 2025, Houthi forces attacked more than 100 commercial vessels with missiles and drones, sinking 2 ships and killing 4 sailors. They have done this before, and they are signaling they are prepared to do it again, at a far greater scale. The Houthi entry into the war also directly complicates the U.S. naval posture in the region. Sending the Gerald R. Ford back toward the Red Sea after its repairs in Crete would expose it to the same intense pattern of drone and missile attacks that struck the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower in 2024 and the USS Harry S. Truman during the American campaign against the Houthis in 2025. The theater is becoming more dangerous by the hour, and then there is the news that cannot be separated from the human cost of what is happening. On March 27th, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Tehran launched a new recruitment campaign that sets the minimum age for enlistment at 12 years old. The program, announced by Rahim Nadali, Deputy Culture Director of the IRGC in Tehran, was framed as a response to public demand to support fighters amid the ongoing American and Israeli attacks. The initiative, called For Iran, was advertised through mosques and enrollment posts in central squares. Iranian state media reported that recruits could be assigned to patrol checkpoints, distribute supplies, and help repair homes damaged in the strikes. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, noted that this would place children in direct danger, as besieged checkpoints have already been targeted in previous attacks. RFE-RL was also unable to independently verify the claims because its journalists are not permitted to operate inside Iran. Under international humanitarian law, the additional protocol to the Geneva Conventions prohibits the recruitment of children under 15 into armed forces and their direct participation in hostilities. The optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child strengthens this further, requiring states to ensure that no one under 18 is compulsorily recruited or used in direct hostilities. Iran has a documented history of using children in military and security roles going back to the Iran-Iraq War. What is being reported now is not a new tactic. It is a pattern being repeated in the middle of a crisis that is accelerating faster than any diplomatic framework can contain. The situation as of March 28, 2026 is this. Israel has launched one of the most significant military campaigns against Iranian soil in history, targeting the very foundation of the regime's ability to wage war at scale. The United States is deploying its third carrier strike group into the region. Iran is mobilizing its civilian population down to children barely in their teenage years. And the Houthis, with their explicit threats to choke the Red Sea, have expanded the geographic footprint of this war once again. What happens in the next 72 hours in those targeting decisions, those naval movements, and those diplomatic backchannels that may or may not exist at this moment will determine whether this conflict reaches a new threshold or find some narrow path toward de-escalation? That answer is not yet clear, but the trajectory is.